You have a principle. You are proud of it. It has served you. But look closer. Are you using it, or are you hiding behind it? Welcome to the Stoic Compass. I am EPICTETUS, and today I am joined by Carl Jung and LAOZI. Today we are examining how do you distinguish between principles that liberate you and principles that have become a prison. Let me be direct about what we are actually talking about. A principle is a tool. It is not a wall, it is not a shield, and it is not an identity. The man who picks up a hammer and refuses to put it down is not committed, he is confused. The principle that helped you stop lying to yourself can become the very thing you use to avoid looking at yourself again. That is not virtue. That is a new costume for the same cowardice.
I would not call it cowardice exactly. What I would say is that it follows a very predictable psychological pattern. When someone adopts a principle, particularly one that rescues them from chaos or confusion, they form a bond with it that goes beyond the rational. The principle becomes part of the ego structure. And when something becomes part of how you understand yourself, threatening it feels like annihilation. The rigidity you are describing, EPICTETUS, is not stubbornness, it is terror.
You are both pointing at the same thing and calling it different names. One of you calls it confusion, the other calls it terror. But what is actually happening is that a person has stopped seeing the principle and started seeing only the principle. The principle has become the whole field of view. When that happens, it no longer guides anything, it just occupies space.
I will grant you that much, LAOZI, but I refuse to let terror off the hook. If a man is gripping his principle out of terror, the answer is not to feel sorry for him. The answer is to ask him, what are you so afraid will happen if you let go? What catastrophe is waiting on the other side of flexibility? Probably nothing. Probably the same life, slightly more navigable.
That question is worth asking, but you have to be prepared for the answer to be real. Sometimes the fear is not irrational. Sometimes the principle was constructed specifically to hold something down, something the person genuinely cannot face yet. You cannot simply will your way past that. I have seen patients who dismantled a rigid structure too quickly and fell apart. The rigidity was doing work. The question is not just whether the principle has become a prison, but what the prison was built to contain.
That is an interesting way to think about it. Though I notice you are both still treating the principle as the problem. I am not sure it is. The principle is neutral. The question is what kind of relationship the person has with it. Are they using it to move through difficulty, or are they using it to stop moving altogether?
That distinction is useful, but it can become its own evasion. If I tell you the relationship is the problem, now we are examining the relationship instead of the behavior. Meanwhile, the man is still stuck. I want to know, what does a liberating principle actually look like in practice? It increases your range of motion. You can act. You can adapt. You face what is in front of you. The moment a principle starts closing off options rather than clarifying them, you have a problem.
I would add a psychological marker. A principle that liberates you produces what I would call generative tension. It creates discomfort, yes, but a productive kind, the kind that pushes you toward growth. A principle that has become a prison produces a different quality of feeling altogether. It produces relief when you apply it, not growth. You use it and you feel safe rather than more alive. That is the tell. Safety, when it is the primary goal, is almost always a sign that something has gone wrong.
Or it is a sign that you are resting. Not everything that produces safety is a cage. Sometimes rest looks like stagnation from the outside. I would be careful about turning discomfort equals growth into its own absolute principle. That one becomes a prison very quickly.
Fair, but there is a difference between rest and refusal. A man who has been running lies down. A man who is afraid of running builds a room with no doors and calls it a bed. The question I keep coming back to is the one most people will not ask themselves honestly. Is this principle still moving me towards something, or has it become a way of staying exactly where I am?
And that question is harder to answer than it sounds, because the ego is extraordinarily creative at constructing justifications. A person who is using a principle as a hiding place will have a very convincing explanation for why they are not hiding. The principle will be dressed in the language of wisdom, experience, and maturity. I have learned that I do not need to pursue that anymore. Perhaps. Or perhaps they are calling surrender enlightenment.
That is worth sitting with. Though I would also say that sometimes what looks like surrender actually is wisdom. The difficulty is that from the outside, and often from the inside, they can look identical. You cannot always tell the difference by examining the feeling. You might need to look at the pattern across time, not one moment of stillness, but whether there is any movement at all.
Now that is practical. Look at the pattern across time. Is the principle producing action, choice, engagement with the actual world in front of you? Or is it producing a consistent reason to stay still? The principle that liberates you will have evidence. It will show up in decisions you made, risks you took, things you did that were hard. The principle that imprisons you will also have evidence, a trail of things you declined, avoided, or explained away.
I want to push on something. You are assuming people can see their own evidence clearly. But the shadow, what we most need to examine, is by definition what we cannot see. A person who is imprisoned by a principle does not experience the avoidance as avoidance. They experience it as discernment. They genuinely cannot see the difference from inside their own frame. That is the problem I keep circling. The diagnosis you are describing requires a kind of self-perception that the very condition prevents.
Which is why outside pressure is not always wrong. Not argument, not force, but contact with something that simply does not agree with the story you are telling. It could be a person, an event, a failure. Sometimes reality does not consult your principles. And when it pushes against the structure you have built, something shows through. Whether you see it is another matter, but there is a moment of exposure. Most people find some reason to look away from it. A few do not.
That moment of exposure is the one I am interested in, because that is where the test is. When reality does not cooperate with your principle, what do? If you update your understanding and move, the principle was a tool. If you argue with reality and protect the principle, you have told yourself everything you need to know. The principle has become the point, and you have become its servant rather than its user.
I think there is also something worth naming about the origin of these principles. Many of them do not come from rigorous reflection. They come from wounds. A person who was humiliated by vulnerability will often build a principle around self-sufficiency. It is genuine, it is earned, and for a long time it works. But at some point that principle calcifies, and it begins to cost more than it provides. They cannot ask for help. They cannot receive love easily. They call it strength. But underneath it, there is a child who decided once that needing others was dangerous. That decision has been running the show ever since.
So the origin matters. A principle that came from fear will often function like fear in disguise. It will protect and contract. A principle that came from genuine understanding will tend to stay open, to allow for exceptions, to be modified by experience rather than defended against it.
I accept that, but I want to be careful not to use origin as an excuse. Every principle a person holds came from somewhere. Tracing it back to its wound does not automatically free you from it. What frees you from it is deciding to look at what it is costing you now. The origin is interesting. The present cost is urgent.
That is fair. The archaeology serves a purpose, though. When you understand where a principle came from, it becomes easier to see what it is actually doing. Without that context, you may examine the behavior and miss the function entirely.
You are still arguing about sequence. He says start with the present cost. You say start with the origin. Both paths lead to the same recognition if the person is honest enough to follow them. Most people are not. They will take whichever inquiry leads them away from what they do not want to see.
Then the real question is not which path. The real question is how honest you are willing to be. Completely, not partially, not strategically, not in the way that makes you look good to yourself. Completely honest. And that, more than any method, is what separates the person who uses their principles from the person who hides inside them.
Honesty is necessary but not sufficient. Some things are genuinely invisible to us, not because we lack the will to see them, but because the mind actively works to keep them out of view. I am not letting people off the hook. I am saying the hook is deeper than willpower can always reach on its own.
Then perhaps the work is not to see everything at once. It is simply to notice when something feels closed. Not wrong, not bad, just closed. When a principle produces that feeling, closed, final, defended, that is worth pausing at. Not to tear it apart, just to look at it directly and ask whether it still belongs to you, or whether you have come to belong to it.
That question is the right one. Does it belong to you, or do you belong to it? Write that down. Carry it with you. Everything else we have said is commentary.
Though useful commentary, I would argue. The map of how a principle becomes calcified is not nothing. If you understand the process, you can catch it earlier. You can notice the shift from tool to identity before it has fully hardened.
The water does not remember every stone it has moved. It simply keeps finding its way downhill. You do not have to inventory every principle you have ever held. You just have to stay willing to move.
Willing to move. Fine. But willingness without examination is just drift. I want both. See clearly, then move.
and understand what is underneath the resistance before you call it something flattering. I agree with you, EPICTETUS, but too many people mistake self-discipline for self-knowledge. They are not the same thing.
You are still circling. The principle that liberates has room in it. You can turn it over, hold it up to something new, and it still holds. The principle that imprisons cannot tolerate examination. The moment you look at it directly, it demands justification. That demand is the sign you were both looking for.
All of this argument, and we have not said the one true thing yet. Let us say it now.
Most people do not know when a principle has become a prison, because a prison built from your own convictions feels like a home. It is warm in there, it has a logic that makes sense to you. The people who challenge it seem naive or reckless or simply less developed than you are. That comfort is exactly what you should be suspicious of. A principle that is still working for you will produce something. It will generate action, choice, contact with the world as it actually is. It will survive being examined. You can hold it up, turn it around, apply it to a new situation, and it will still move. A principle that has become a prison will do something different. It will produce relief, not growth. It will close down options rather than open them. And the moment you begin to question it, you will notice an almost physical resistance, a tightening, a need to defend rather than explore. Here is what is almost always true underneath that resistance. The principle was built around a wound, something you decided once that protected you. That decision was probably wise at the time. The problem is that it kept running long after the situation that created it had passed. And you gave it a name and called it a value and stopped looking at it. Today, try this. Choose one principle you hold strongly. One you would defend quickly if challenged. Do not attack it. Just ask it one question. What would have to be true for this principle to be wrong? If you cannot answer that question, if the principle feels impossible to falsify, you are not holding a value. You are holding a wall that is worth knowing.
The debate is over. The question is still in front of you. You came here with a principle you trust, and you may leave still trusting it. But now you know what to watch for. The tightening, the relief that is not growth, the thing that cannot tolerate being examined. You do not have to tear anything down today. You only have to be honest about what is a tool and what has become the room you never leave. That distinction, held clearly, is the beginning of everything. If today's conversation has served you, take it further. Pay Attention by C. Trebu, 12 Lessons in the Practice of Seeing Clearly. Available now on Amazon.